everyone, welcome back to the Ink Matrix, and today we have a lot of things to talk about and they are all very interesting. 2 days ago I finished watching Voltron Season 8, and by the end of it I was like sobbing on the couch for 15 minutes straight because I was too happy and my family didn't want to come near to me at all. Yeah, so there's so much to talk about with this final season of Voltron. It caps off this epic journey that we've been so privileged to be able to watch for over 2.5 years. I really love Voltron, like, you have no idea. It's just magical but so real at the same time, and I credit it for my happiness over these last 2 years. There's nothing anyone could say to really convince me otherwise, but try your best in the comments down below. There's this huge, big thing about the reverse character development Lance has, but that's not the point of this video and we'll get to that later on. From here on out, we're assuming that the writers are or did consider everything that we're considering at this moment. Keith's blatant orientation, queer baiting, character developmental stuff, political standpoints, racial factors, everything. We're assuming they did their work very thoroughly and researched everything, because otherwise this video wouldn't be valid. We're going to go through all the main paladins and find out and kind of discover how they've developed as characters. I'm so sorry, but we won't be able to go through Hagar and Lotor for the time being because I haven't formed solid opinions about them yet, but when I do, be sure to expect a new video on it, because I really want to explore the family dynamics between Hagar, Lotor and Zarkon, because even though it might seem a bit clear-cut all the way, but not really, yeah, there's still a lot to discuss and pick up, you know. Also in this episode of like yeeting VLD positive into the internet space, my friend Clarissa has helped me edit this essay, and she's got a few points that I would like to lay down sort of at the end of this video. She did make good arguments. So first up we have Hunk. Hunk's character arc is one of the most solid ones in the series. From a scared but warm and friendly kid to a scared but warm and friendly kid who acknowledges his fears head on and learns to be brave, to stand by his friends. He almost
help those Alteans remember some moment that made them
Hagar's brainwashed Alteans to trust the Voltron coalition with his cooking, and he shows us what it's like to be connected to your family and your culture. For Pidge, we don't see much character development over the last season, but that's pretty much because she's already there. So her mind-melding scene in Allurance is just her discovering more of her powers as a paladin of Voltron. She already knows what she wants, she's gotten what she wants, and she knows that she's smart and what she's capable of. So I think Pidge has space to grow, as we can see in the last scene, right at the end, she does grow. But in terms of character growth, I think she's already way up there with Shiro and, may I say, Keith.
You're the one I'm most impressed by.
Let's keep Keith for the moment and go to Shiro. Here we see Shiro finally gel with the rest of his team. He's always been all spaced out like and saying really inspirational stuff to his teammates because he's gone through much more than any of them ever had. And that stuff with him being all mind controlled by Hagar, and because he's about 7 years older than the rest of the paladins and about 9 years older than Pidge, so that age gap does play a sort of factor in determining his relationship with the rest of his teammates. He hasn't really been part of the team for a long time. Season 7 and 8 changes that. Placing Shiro in charge of the IGF Atlas puts him in a place where he can finally use his leadership skills to the best of his abilities. The 5 paladins of Voltron, now with Allura, bond spectacularly well, and with Shiro helping them from an external place, we can see that they are even better well equipped to defend the universe against Hagar. We constantly see him learning and fitting into his role as the captain of the IGF Atlas, but when that scene popped up at the end, we finally know that he's reached the end of his goal. Here, let's take a moment to sit back and respect the writers. Voltron can sometimes be considered as a kid's show, when we have moments such as the characters not responding realistically to situations, like brushing off a hurtful comment immediately or responding too brashly to a dangerous situation like normal people wouldn't. We treat it as a mistake, something that happens only in kids' shows because kids are not perceptive enough to pick up on it. But here we see Shiro's entire arc come to a close. We are constantly reminded of his PTSD from his time in Gora captivity, and we are constantly shown him trying to get better. In this picture, we see it clearly stated that he leaves the war behind. That's a huge thing. Shiro is someone who's been attached to the war ever since he knew about it, just like Allura. It has taken so much from him. First Matt and Sam for a short period of time, Adam, and then Allura. To hear that he actually moves on and finds love even after going through that much is really amazing. And although I do think it would be better if he and Curtis were given a few more interactions throughout the season, I think it still works because we see a few scenes between the both of them. We are left to infer the journey that they went through to get together. After all, that wedding does take place about a year after the war ended. So fans are free to imagine the healing and the companionship that led up to their marriage. That LGBT rep was both on-screen and off-screen, and because it happens after he's lost someone he was engaged to, it's also sort of reinforcing that this relationship isn't just a one-time extra special deal to slap onto the back of a series. After Adam, Shiro goes through all the pain and heartbreak, and then heals and finds love with another man. Breakups and new beginnings, that happens in everyday life. And to find that represented in Voltron was to me one of the happiest things that I have ever experienced. So enough of me waxing poetry about Shiro. Let's move on to Keith. So we can't talk about Keith without talking about Lance, and we can't talk about Lance without talking about Allura. Essentially, I'm here to assert the validity of both ships, one het and one gay. Pretty much Lance just being bi all around. So that, my friends, is my TED Talk. No, not really. Lance and Allura are at such odds at this moment, but again, we should remember that the Voltron production team has always supported clans, although Allurance is canon. So here's a rundown. Lance has been crushing on Allura since the beginning of the series, and we are shown multiple times that it's very serious. Lance really does like Allura, and though some don't think that Lance and Allura should be together, it doesn't change the fact that he is quite in love with Allura. We can definitely see why. She's strong, even though she can show vulnerability. She's absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, and she's not Pidge level smart, but she's a very intelligent leader, and she's absolutely strong-willed. But what Allura feels for Lance isn't anything like what he feels for her. It's quite apparent in the show. She always puts the mission before anything else, except that stuff with Lotor, but she didn't really know what she was getting into back then. Now, the only thing that made them get together was Lance's willingness to finally ask her out and her desire for a family. Also, she is quite fond of Lance, and she's seen how he's grown up and matured, and that does definitely play a role in why she finally accepts him. So when she chooses to sacrifice herself to save the universe, that's probably the best choice she could have made for herself and for Lance. It's not just because it provides the series with a reason to break off Lance's and Allura's relationship. It also shows an inversion of the typically male role of the final hero. You know, that one guy who sacrifices his life to save the entire universe? That role, no matter how cliche it is given to a woman of color, a leader and a princess of her entire species. She makes her own choice and is proud of it, and she saves all the realities with her sacrifice. I don't think that's something to look down on at all. People say that giving Lance such a burden was cruel to him, but we haven't considered what Allura's sacrifice meant for her. She's literally the hero of all known realities, and that's how much it means to everyone. So her sacrifice really meant a lot, even though it causes Lance pain. So Allura is the hero of this story. Where does that leave Lance and Keith? Well, Shiro might be the present LGBT rep, but Clance is the future. Even Lance says so himself.
I voted for Keith. He's our leader, plus he's half Galra, so I think he's like the future.
By the end of Season 8, we can all, fandom or non-fandom, agree that Lance is a bit... Did we just see him go from the cocky, fun-loving Lance to the grown-up, responsible, confident Lance to the heartsick, chained to his dead girlfriend, part Altair Lance? I mean, I don't understand. Like, sure, bring him back to his roots. Like, he is pretty much the most loving and the most compassionate of all his teammates, but right before he and Allura got together, in his scenes with Keith, that's the most Lance we've ever seen him. He's confident, he's trying to bond with his teammates properly, and he's finally ready to confess to Allura. That's a Lance we've always wanted to see. At the end of the season, Lance is still himself, but just mellower. He's happy just leading a simple life on Earth with his family, just like how he always wanted. But there's something not quite complete about it. The caption on his picture, which shows him staring fondly at a juniperberry flower, says that he's surrounded by the things he loves. But because he's been pining for Allura for so long, and then loses her right after she starts dating him, he's still going to be very attached to her memory. It's going to take a long time for his wounds to heal, and during that time, he's going to learn that there will be no one who can take Allura's place in his heart. Here's where we look to Shiro for divine gay guidance. Shiro's arc includes Adam, whom he loved and lost, but he still finds love with Curtis in the end. I think this foreshadows Lance's future because Lance, just like Shiro, has gone through a heartbreak and lost someone that he loves. Let's look at Keith's development. He's definitely grown up. He's now sure of himself, he's less of a spitfire fighter and more of a steady leader, and he's very patient with Lance. Keith has always been kind to Lance and only gets annoyed when Lance sort of like riles him up. So now that Lance has become less cocky and more open, Keith can properly see him not just an annoying teammate whom he has an unexplainable crush on, but a mature and loving friend who he knows can truly love someone. And even though that someone is Allura, Keith is first and foremost Lance's friend and supports him in any way he can. Now that Allura's gone, Keith is definitely willing to wait it out. He's learned patience and he can wait until Lance is ready to accept him. And the relationship, unlike Allurance, doesn't have to adhere to a strict Voltron season timeline, but develop naturally and in its own time off-screen. This way, there is no endgame. The writers have given their creative freedom over to the fan base, and with Clance and Allurance as both strong foundations. And that, I think, is the greatest blessing they could ever give us. Now, I'm paraphrasing something that my friend said. The ending was abrupt, but it was left open-ended for a reason. This show is science fiction and quite fantastical, but it's also realistic in a way that they were in the middle of a war and they had very little time to process what was happening to them, so it was all very touch and go and acting on emotion. Sometimes that emotion needs time to be processed and healed, and time that cannot be fit within Voltron's 8 seasons, as crazy as that may sound. So yes, a lot of things were left unsaid and a lot of things weren't tied up as tightly as we hoped it would be, but that can be just an implication for something else, another future, another journey that we as the fan base, as the fandom can continue. The production team and the voice actors have worked so incredibly hard to produce a show that they thought was worth sharing to the entire world. It's really hard to satisfy everyone, so I think the season finale was quite a brave move for everyone on the production team, I guess. I remember reading that one of the producers said that they were gonna end Voltron so that no other producers could continue it along the same path. But I think the season finale opens up so many different beautiful avenues for us to continue the Voltron legacy and discover more possibilities of Voltron's future. And I don't mean Voltron the robot, I mean Voltron the family. Hey guys, thank you for supporting the channel. I was absolutely floored when Allura decided to sacrifice herself, and when Lance had to go through all that pain. And then I saw all the toxic comments online that I didn't want to see, and it was quite painful because it seemed like those comments weren't considering the whole picture, and they weren't considering everything that the writers and the producers have all put into producing this show. So let's not forget all the happy and wonderful moments, both beautiful and bittersweet, that Voltron has given us over these past 2.5 years, I think. So my interpretation is just one of the stars in a very, very, very wide universe, and I just hope that this video made you a bit happier. We always want to spread positivity. It's still a show that they are all proud of, and we should just enjoy it for what it is. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Ink Matrix. I'm Renee, and on this channel we all love Voltron and the joy it gives us, even though it hurts sometimes. Subscribe please, and tap that notification bell if you like this video, and I'll see you next week.
All I do in the name of Allura. Father, there's a question I've been wanting to ask you. What was her name? What was she like?
And does anyone not love Lotor when he's being his strong little Gowron baby boy self? Like, he's precious.